Okay, so chapter 1 is essentially just an introduction to urban philosophy, and it goes into the history, how it occurred, how it happened, and specifically what kind of issues that urban philosophers would gear towards. So urban philosophy began with, not necessarily began, but gained attention post World War, when social changes and social structures were being altered, and governments and the government were giving benefits and such to soldiers that were returning home. And there was an increase in students gaining higher knowledge within colleges, universities, high school, and there were all these pushes for to build complexes and houses and neighborhoods. And there's the baby boomers. So essentially, what happened was with the influx of students in colleges and population growing, and more people gaining their college degrees, more people were able to think critically, able to realize what was going on around them within their own communities. So essentially, that's where individuals were understanding what was going on, understanding what was wrong with discrimination, with segregation, and I'm sorry, with segregation, discrimination, and all those things. So that's why post World War, that's why all these civil rights acts began. Women began wanting equal rights, voting rights as well. So afterwards, there were many different aspects post World War that happened. Colored soldiers were being disqualified or being told they didn't meet the right criteria to be home ownership, even though their equals were gaining access to all these homes, and they couldn't for some whack excuse for whatever reason, which essentially came down to the fact that it was because they were colored or because they weren't wanted within that community. Despite the fact that it looked good on paper, despite all these facts that these soldiers were getting benefits and they were getting all these rights to homes and stuff, it looked good on paper, but essentially what was going on was they were being cheated out of it one way or another. So it only deepened the racial lines, and deepened middle class, high class, working class. It just made that barrier even more congruent. And then the chapter also goes in, it kind of goes into like a timeline, and then it also goes into gentrification, which is essentially the process of saying you buy out a neighborhood or of a working class neighborhood, essentially like large in minorities or colored people or black people. Let's say a company just comes in, buys out all the land, essentially just rebuilds everything and aims it for the white middle class or the upper class, high class, the top 2%, whatever it may be. And they essentially kick the working class out and make space for the middle class or whatever desired class they have. And this occurred all throughout the United States, after the World War. And then this didn't only happen back then. This also, as the book explains, it also happens through the Bush administration, through the Clinton administration, since there was such a big push for the war on drugs during their administration. So much money was being taken from school fundings, university fundings, state fundings, and put into the war on drugs, being put on law enforcement, and things like that. So the rate for incarceration went up, and obviously, like with all these, it was geared towards the colored, the working class that were given that were being taken away from the homes and being put in prison. So essentially, during that time period is when there was an increase in white middle class moving back to these cities that they had originally fled from, or not fled from, but essentially left because black families were moving into. So urban philosophy, it focuses on these injustices that many others wouldn't even realize without it being explained to them. Like me, obviously I have witnessed this firsthand, but I have never put much thought to it. I've never realized that that's the kind of stuff that goes on. So urban philosophy essentially focuses on these injustices and these situations within our own communities, within our own cities, wherever it may be. And they push the question, why? Why do we do that? And why does that occur? Why should it occur? And that's essentially what the first chapter is about.